Hello, I'm Mario, and I am a motion designer. In the previous tutorial, we learned how to model and animate this scene. Now it's about time to render it. So we will start with some basic materials, then add some lights, and then go in the materials again to add more texture and complexity. For doing that, I'm not using the standard engines of Cinema 4D because they are slow, too much complex, and I hate them. I just use Octane. Octane is an amazing GPU render engine. It does mean that it uses the GPU cards of your PC, but only if you are using an NVIDIA one, because right now the AMD cards are not supported, and it's way easier to use, way faster. You can have incredible results in no time. You can also create very complex materials thanks to the node editor that is very easy to use. And if you want to give it a try, on the website there's the free trial that is basically the standard version of Octane with just some limitation on the export and watermarking your rendering. And if you want to buy it, it's very cheap. It's like 200 euros for a year. That is like nothing. And that's it. Sorry for the long introduction. And remember that if you don't know how to animate or to model the scene, you can watch the previous tutorial about it, or you can just download the scene. The link is in the description. Let's jump into the tutorial. So first of all, we need to create an environment in which we can insert our composition. And the best way to do this is through the HDRI. So let's click on the Octane button and then go on Live Viewer window. Now I prefer to put this window on the right side of the screen, but you also put it on the left, it's your decision. Then go to Object and click HDRI Environment. Now we can see a new icon in the Object tab, click on this blue icon and then go to Image Texture. Now let's load our image, and this is a free pack, the link is in the description. I love this pack, it's amazing. And let's select one of them. Then click yes if you want to create a copy of this file in the same folder where you've saved your Cinema 4D project. I'm gonna click no. Then click on this button and let's see the magic happens. Yes, in only 5 seconds we've created this scene, and if you know the standard engines of Cinema 4D, this is amazing. Now click on this icon and let's change the settings of Octane. And first of all, change the direct lighting to path tracing, because direct lighting is not that good and PMC is very slow. Then on max samples we need to say how many times Octane has to calculate our scene. This is just about finding a good compromise, because with low samples your render will be very noisy, but if you go crazy with the number of max samples, it will take forever to render. For this scene we're gonna use 800 samples. The number on diffuse, specular and scatter depth represents how many times the light will bounce in our scene. I find out that 8 in every one of them is good, and I don't really remember what the other settings do specifically, so sorry. You can copy my settings, and if you want I can link to you up here some videos that cover this in depth. On settings, click on environment and change the color to black. This is basically a fake light that is surrounding our scene and we don't want it, so black is like the light is turning off, and that's it for the settings. So let's create the first material. We're gonna focus on the gold for now. Go materials, then add a metallic material, double click on it, let's rename it gold, and then we're gonna change the diffuse color, trying to match something in between the yellow and orange. When we have done, let's drag and drop the material to our object, let's say the gold sphere, and yes, nothing is happening right now, and that's because the metallic materials of Octane don't change color according to the diffuse channel, but with the specular one, so let's do the same for this one. And as soon as we hit OK, we can see the difference in real time, and god, this is amazing. If you want to do something crazy, just change the color and enjoy the result. Now I got some note and I'm using the same color I used in my original project, and that's it, the gold material. Now, as we can see, the reflection are a bit too much. Actually, the material is 100% reflective. To avoid this, go in the roughness channel and change the number of float. The more is higher, the more rough our material will be. And I'd say let's keep it low, like for example 0.07. I like the result, but it's your choice. Okay, now let's apply the gold material to the cone, the volume and the other elements. And as you can see, this is just one element with an HDRI, and it's pretty amazing, honestly. Here in the cylinder, I'm setting the gold material applied just to the selection we set up in the previous tutorial. And now for the black material, let's add a glossy material. Let's double click on it, and in the diffuse channel, let's set a dark color. Don't use a pure black or pure white. I just use a 10%, it's way better. Pure black and pure white are unrealistic. Okay, now let's apply the black to our objects. And after that, let's change the roughness. Okay, now we need the white material. To create it, just duplicate the black texture, holding Control and drag and drop the material in the Ease panel. And let's change the diffuse of this new material to, for example, 95% white. And let's apply it to the small cylinder in the scene. Okay, now we have the basic materials in our scene, and don't forget that if you click on the blue icon next to your HDRI, you can change its power to make it very bright or very dark. Let's go for something a little less bright than the one, personal preference. And in case you are distracted by the reflection on the floor, you can rotate the HDRI also to change the reflection of your materials, as you can see in the gold sides of the sphere. Yeah, you can rotate both the x-axis or the y. Okay, I think now I am good with the HDRI. Now let's create other lights to have more reflection on the objects. Go to Object, Lights and Octane Area Light. Let's deactivate the HDRI for a moment, holding Alt and double click on that icons. Let's move our light in the scene. Now it's very bright and it's so close, so let's move it further. Of course, we can also rotate the light. And to disable that ugly black stuff in our scene, go to this icon and put the opacity down to 0. Okay, now it's better. One way to create a light is to create a targeted light. So, go to Object, Lights, Targeted Area Light. Now we have a light with a little blue tag next to it and another object in our scene, the light target. Basically, this is a null. And the light will face towards this null no matter what. So I use the targeted area light like most of the time because I have more control on what the lights are lightening. Let me do some example to make you see what's happening, what's going on. Okay, I think I found the perfect position for this light. Look at the new reflection we achieved with just one light. I think it's amazing. You can also increase the power of the light or its temperature. The more the temperature will be high, the more bluer your color will be. On the opposite, the more the temperature will be lower, we will have a reddish color. You can also duplicate the light, for example, using the same target and having the same light from another direction with a colder color. But for this tutorial we're gonna use some neutral lights, so let's put everything to default, both in power and temperature. Now let's reactivate the HDRI again, and let's see our scene. I think it's way better. We have some reflections on the floor, but I think the lights are very strong, so let's put them down just a little bit. Okay, I like it. Okay, now to the next step. Select the camera and go to Tag, Octane Tag, and then Camera Tag. If you don't have a camera, don't worry, go to Octane Dialog, go to Object and insert a camera tag. It's the same. Now, in this new Octane tag, we have a bunch of different options, but let's just skip to Camera Imager. Let's activate it. And don't forget to activate the Spectral AI Denoiser. This is a massive update Octane recently introduced, and basically it will clean up the noise from our scene, and it works just so good that I think it's wizardry or something like that. Parameters to play around. For example, the exposure will make our scene more bright or more darker. Don't do something crazy here. And then we have the highlights compression. It will make the whites in our scene less white, so we don't lose information. Just take a look at the reflection on the gold part. Response, the standard settings is sRGB, but there are a bunch of different options, and some of them they can have some good look. It's up to you. I normally don't use them just because I do the styling, the little bit of post-processing in After Effects. So I like to keep the response linear with a gamma of 2.2. Just because with these settings I can have more control in the post-processing in After Effects. Then you can add some vignetting, and please don't do this because you can do this in After Effects. If you're doing this right now, it's destructive. You can also change the saturation of the image. Maybe a little bit of saturation is okay here. Then go on the post-processing tag, enable it. This is the settings, the bloom power. It basically boosts up your reflections. You can do some crazy stuff, and with the cutoff you can balance the reflections. It's up to you. Maybe just a little bit in this scene, it's amazing. You can do crazy stuff. Again, it's up to you. Don't do something super duper crazy. Just try to find a good balance. I think this is okay for this scene. Okay, now our scene is almost done, but I don't think it's interesting enough, so probably we can do something else on the materials. Let's duplicate the gold, for example, and let's rename this new material Grange Gold. Then, what we want to do is to create more complexity in the roughness. So, click on Node Editor, and you will see this new screen. Don't worry, it will be very easy to use. You can move in this panel holding the 1 key of your keyboard or zoom in and out with number 2. Go in the search panel and write image texture, then drag and drop it in the node editor. Let's select an image. This is also a free pack I use like a lot, and link is in the description. So let's select one of these images for the image texture. Okay. Connect it to the roughness in this case. Now nothing is happening because the material is not inserted in our scene. Let's do this. And as you can see, we have a totally different look. Let me explain you what's happening here. We've inserted a black and white image connected to the roughness channel of our texture. This means that the black and white parts of the image will drive the strength of the roughness. So, for white parts, the roughness will be at maximum level, while for the black ones, it will be to 0. So, no roughness at all. Of course, if we have grays, its values will be something in between. And in this panel, we can play with power setting that will increase the strength of the map, and with gamma, we can change the contrast of the image. We can also invert the texture if we are not satisfied by the result, and I think inverting here is pretty good. I'll show you another tool. Go in the search bar and type for gradient, then insert an Octane gradient in between the image texture and the roughness. Okay, now we can see a black and white gradient. And this will work in the same exact way of the levels tool you can use, for example, in Photoshop or in After Effects. So if we make the slider closer to each other, we can crunch the textures to have better result. And if you want to edit, for example, the size of the texture, just click on the image texture, then go on the UV transform. In this panel you can move, rotate or scale the texture, so you have full control of what's happening in your scene. For example, I'm trying to make the texture a little bit smaller here. And yeah, I do back and forth between transformation and gradient because I want to create a texture I actually like. And for the sake of this tutorial, I like the result we obtained. I want to show you something. As before, search for image texture, select an image, connect it to roughness. We are just creating another map. And for this texture, I'm just creating a very small scratches along the surface of the sphere. Now go to the search bar and write add, then insert this new node in our editor and connect both textures to texture 1 and texture 2 and then the output of the node in the roughness. In this way we've just fused the two textures into a new one we can use to control the roughness of our material. Now I will speed up this part because it's just me doing some fine tuning to the texture. And if you want to have less contrast in the gradient, you can just change the color. For example, darkening the white or lightening the black. Okay, I'm satisfied with the result and I want to apply the same texture to the black part of the sphere. So let me copy the wall node editor of this gold material. Let's paste it to a new black material. And let's apply it to the black part of our sphere. And yeah, I think we're done. With just two images, we've created a very different scene. The scene is way more interesting, more complex, also more realistic because in real life no materials has like zero roughness. Let's just apply a new material to the cone because I don't really like it right now. So let's duplicate the standard gold material and let's call it con. Let's apply it to our object. And go in the node editor and load an image texture. Connect it to the roughness channel. And we see that something is happening, but this is not what I want. So this time let's click on projection. And here change the texture projection to cylinder, because an object very similar to a cone. In this panel we can change the rotation, the position and the scale of the texture. In this case let's go crazy with the z-axis. And we can see that some horizontal lines will start appearing on our cone. This is good. So let's play with the scale just a little bit. And when we are satisfied, let's add a gradient to control the strength of the texture. Let's see what happens. Yes, I definitely love this texture. Okay, and that's it for the textures. The next step will be to export this animation and then go to After Effects to improve it just a little bit. Okay, to export this, go to Edit Render Settings, then go to Output and check that everything is okay, so the size, the frame rate, and on frame range, go select all frames. And since this is a loop animation, remove the last frame, because the first one and the last one are basically the same frame. Then go to Save. I usually save my export as a PNG sequence in 16 bits. That's because in After Effects we can have more control. Then click on this icon and select a folder to save the sequence. Okay, just a quick tip. Never save directly as a video. Just go for the image sequence. That could be PNG, XR, JPEG. Don't save as a video, because if the render will interrupt at some point, you will have to recreate the whole video from the beginning. With a sequence you can just render the frame you need. Then go on the Octane render tab, and if you don't see it, go the renderer drop down menu and select Octane renderer. In this tab we can also don't move anything, because right now we are good like this. We just need to activate the spectral AI denoiser in the final export, since we activated it in the camera. So go on the render passes, denoiser passes, and click on denoise beauty. But since we are not exporting the passes here, we can skip this part. But keep in mind that you can easily export the shadows, the reflections, the lights and everything you want as individual image sequences, so we can have more control in the post-processing part. But I will not doing this because we are just exporting an image with everything inside of it, but keep in mind this. And when we are ready, we can close this tab, and then we can click on this icon and our rendering is starting. Now we just have to wait it to finish. Okay, now let's jump to After Effects and double click on this panel. Go to the place where you have saved your render and just select one single image. Then click on PNG sequence and import option create a composition, and import as footage is okay, and then click on import. Then we have all the images and a composition that we can see as video. Now let's change the color depth of this composition from 8 to 16, and to do this click on this button and then go to the 16 bits per channel. And then what I usually do, I just create an effect on this footage called the Lumetri color. In this single effect you have access to a bunch of different regulations to your footage, and let's have a look at some of them. You can also apply some LUTs. You can play with the brightness, contrast, the highlights, the shadows. You have full control on everything that is happening here. It's a very powerful tool, so take your time to understand what you want to do. In the creative, there are some looks that you can apply directly on the image. Some of them are really nice, but I don't use them a lot because I like to do stuff manually. But feel free to explore them to see if there's something you really love and play with other settings. One tool I use like every time is the curve tool, and with this I can control the amount of white points and black points of the image to add more contrast or to remove it. It's a very amazing tool. I won't go much deeper into the other settings of the Lumetri Color because the video will be super long, and also because I really like the result we obtained with just a few clicks. And if you are satisfied too, I think we can go to the render. To do this, go to Composition and add to render queue. Then render settings is okay to best settings. Go in the output module. What I usually do is having the format set in QuickTime, and in format option I use Apple ProRes 422. Click OK. Click OK again and select where to export your video. For this tutorial I'm gonna export it on desktop. Okay, the render is over. Before uploading the video on the internet, so Instagram, YouTube, Vimeo or whatever, we need to compress it because it will look much better after this last step. For doing this, I use this free software called Handbrake, link in the description. So let's open Handbrake. Drag and drop your video into this tool. Now you have a lot of settings to export your video to make it better for the web, but I don't want to go deeper into them. And if you want, you can download my personal presets, the one I use every time I upload a video on the internet. The download is for free on my Gameloud profile. Also, this link is in the description. And don't forget to specify the path where you want to save your new MP4 video. When you're good, click on Start Encode. Let's wait, and that's it. The video is fully converted and you can post it on the web as it is. And that's it for this tutorial. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like this video. Put any comments in the comment section if you want to share some feedback about the video, or if you have any question. Tag me on Instagram if you create something inspired by this tutorial, and of course follow me on my Instagram. And I remember you that every link I talked about in this video is down in the description. And that's all for today. See you in the next video. Bye!